Hey everybody, thank you for stopping by Universal Chronicles. I don't even know if I'm gonna post this, but it keep like nagging at me. It's been nagging at me for a few days, and I just been kind of pondering on this particular thing. But it kind of makes you wonder. Now, what I'm about to say may sound crazy, but it is what it is. It keep nagging me, so I'm just gonna go on and do. I'm just gonna go on and do it, right? So I'm gonna go outside. I was cleaning up, but I'm gonna step outside for a minute. Even though it's kind of loud out here, they flying jets and whatever those kind of planes go. Anyway, so what's been kind of nagging at me is, you remember in the story of creation, right, in Genesis, how God told Adam that he could eat from every tree in the garden, but not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, right? Okay, so we know that in the garden, maybe I should have stayed in the house. We know that in the garden, there was a serpent, right? And the serpent was talking to Eve. The serpent was talking to Eve, and the serpent was, telling Eve, what did God say? What did he say about eating, from the trees in the garden? And so really it was like the serpent was asking Eve questions about the information that had been passed on to her, because mind you, God told Adam first and he created Eve later. And of course, I'm assuming it was Adam's responsibility to pass the information on to Eve. So I'm pretty sure she knew what God said, right? So as the serpent, talked with her, asked her questions about what God said, he might have questioned her, like, well, why do you think he said that? Why doesn't want you to eat from that tree, right? And so I'm thinking today, see if I could put this together the way it's been in my mind. When they talk about the Kundalini energy, right? The Kundalini energy sits at the base of your spine, right? Um, Pretty much like right there where your root chakra is, right? And it's an energy that is coiled at the base of your spine, like coiled like a serpent, kind of. But when you go through the Kundalini awakening, it begins to uncoil and it works its way up. So the energy starts at the base of the spine and it works its way up, all the way up throughout the chakras, right, till you get to the crown chakra. And when you get to the crown chakra, you have energy flowing in, right? So you have energy flowing within through your crown chakra, and you have also energy flowing upward from the base of your spine. Some people would probably say that there are two different energies. One could be the masculine energy, which I would say is the Kundalini energy, which is rising up, because a lot of times masculine energy has to do with logic and stuff like that, more of a earthy thing, material thing, whereas the feminine energy, I would say, is the energy that you receive from the universe, from Haya, from your higher self, from God, um, from Source. So you have your feminine energy coming inward and downward, and your masculine energy flowing upward, and they meet and they become one. So your masculine and feminine energy kind of becoming one. Now this is just a theory because I don't even know if it's true or not, but it's been kind of nagging at me, like it keep coming up in my mind. So say that when this serpent began talking to Eve, what if her Kundalini energy was already rising up, right? And so she began to look at things different and ask more questions. And she wanted to share it with Adam. And he like, I'm not supposed to eat that, right? But she gives him the fruit, and he takes a bite of the fruit, and his eyes open up, and then they both realize that they're naked, right? Now, what if, just what if, the serpent that they mentioned was that Kundalini energy, right? And when they ate the apple, not the apple, when they ate the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, then everything didn't just appear good. Now, let me stop right there for a minute, because in today's society and in the era that I grew up in, we were taught, to treat others as we want to be treated. We were taught, to turn the other cheek, to forgive. For the most part, that things were good. If you think back to how TV shows were back then, they showed you families that were in harmony, having family dinners. Everybody sat at the table and had dinner. They communicate about their day, what they got going on, stuff like that. They just made things look like they supposed to be perfect, and it was good. And a lot of times we grow up thinking things supposed to be perfect and supposed to be good, and we not realizing the predators that are out to get us. We're not realizing. We don't think that, we don't think that our government would always have our best intentions at heart. We don't think that the people who have authority over us when we're children, or who are our family members who's supposed to love and protect us, we don't think that they will have ill intentions toward us, right? We always we are taught to look at things from a good standpoint, but we know as we grow up and experience things in life, we come to know that it's not true. But then we begin to question, like, if there is a God, why does he let children get molested? Why does he let children get killed? Why does he let innocent people get hurt? You begin to ask these questions, right? So let's just say that that serpent that Eve was talking to was another part of herself. In a sense, you could say probably the lower part of herself, right? That began to ask questions. And when they ate the fruit, their eyes was open, and then they was taken out of the garden, because they was susceptible to eating from the tree of life and living forever, living for a long period of time. But now they have this knowledge, and so they was put out of the garden, right? I'm trying to make this like I see it all in my head. I can, but I'm trying to articulate it where it makes sense, because it makes sense in the way I hear it, the way I see it. I'm trying to articulate it where it could be understood by somebody else. Y'all ever had that problem? But So yeah, they was kicked out the garden because they ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and they was kicked out so they wouldn't eat from the tree of life. Now, what if when they was kicked out of the garden, right? Uh, they had to go out into the world, and things was different. They had to work. They had to work for what they had. It talks about the curse upon Eve and experiencing pain during childbirth, um, and Adam having to uh, work the land. You know, uh, I guess before they didn't have to work. They could just eat from the land and name the animals and stuff like that. But when they got put out of the Garden of Eden, which I'm going to say when they got put out of heaven, um, things became different and they had to work. But what if now that same serpent that they mentioned, is the serpent that lies dormant at the base of our spine. That same serpent, that kundalini energy that's asleep and coiled up at the base of our spine. What if that's the same serpent? What if in the Bible, when it talks about God, it's not talking about source? What if it's talking about God as in man who gave us particular information and told us not to believe certain things? Because when you think about a tree, I could be a tree. You could be a tree. Anybody can be a tree, right? And the fruit of that tree can be your actions, right? The things that you do. It can be the words that you speak, right? It could be your thoughts. But generally, if I'm a tree and I come to you with some fruit, which could be an idea as well, a theory, um, a belief, right? If I come to you and say, I learned this and like now, I'm sharing my fruit, the fruit of my tree with you. And it's up to you to decide if you want to eat this fruit that I'm presenting to you. And what it means by eat is if you want to accept it, if you want to believe it, right? And that's what Yeshua meant when he said, eat the I am the bread. I am the living waters. Like, eat of me. That's what he was saying. And people took it literally like he was saying, eat his flesh and drink his blood. And it wasn't like that. He was just saying his essence and what he had to offer in regards to knowledge and wisdom and the tools that he presented to help individuals heal to be able to access and enter into the kingdom. So what if that whole creation about God telling man not to eat from the tree, eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was not God the source, but God the man saying, don't search for the truth. Don't search for what is right. Trying to prevent you from knowing good and evil and just following their own ideas and beliefs that they've given you in order to keep you locked out and keep you from accessing source and to keep you from accessing heaven, right? So when they did eat of the fruit, they was kicked out. Meaning that could mean they was just kicked out of their community, right? It could have been like an authority figure in that community or whatever, in that garden. And they, once Eve's Kundalini rose and she began to ask questions, God, the man, put her out because she began to ask questions and she ate of the fruit and then her eyes were open. right? And she knew that she was naked. A lot of times during our awakenings, right, our eyes are open, or our eyes open, and we realize we naked. We realize that everything that we knew growing up from the time we was born, what our parents taught us, what our grandparents taught us, what our teachers taught us, it ain't quite correct. It's not correct. Not to say all of it is wrong, but all of it is not correct. And so then you begin to question, and then you begin to see things from a different perspective, from a higher perspective. So with them being kicked out of the community or of the garden because they was disobedient, they were locked out of heaven. They were locked out of gaining certain information because the God, the man of that garden or that community, wanted them to remain submissive to what it is they taught, wanted them to take what they said at face value and not question. Maybe that's why they was kicked out. Hello. How y'all doing? Good. Hi, Mia. Maybe that's why they was kicked out. And so because they were kicked out, they didn't have that access any longer to information. Thus, eventually, that serpent, the part of you that asks questions, that energy went dormant. And you know what? Without that energy, you're not whole, right? You're not whole without that energy. So I wonder if that's why Yeshua came, to help us to become whole again, right? I wonder if that's what that is. But again, it's just a theory, but it's been nagging at me over just for days, just nagging at me. That serpent that spoke to Eve could be the very Kundalini energy, the serpent that lies dormant and coiled up at the base of our spine. And when you go through awakening, that energy starts to rise, and you start realizing things about yourself and the people around you, mostly about yourself. Because once you notice things about yourself and you begin to work on those things, then you start to notice things about the people in your life and the people that you cross paths with. And you begin to see things from a different perspective. And of course, the Holy Spirit helps you to decipher what is correct, what is of the spirit of source, and what is the spirit of man. What is your ego? What is your pride? And what is, the Almighty? So, yeah, just what if we flipped it upside down, right? And if you think about that story, you think about now, there's a lot of information that's been hidden from humanity. Let's take, for instance, like cultures. There's a lot of information of previous, how do you say it? Previous, what's the word I'm looking for? Cities. City's not really the word I'm looking for. So like information about like Atlantis, even certain information about Egypt. Just history. I'm gonna say history. Information about history that's been sifted through and filtered in order to get people to think and act a certain way, right? And at one point, that information was available to all, right? But then when people start questioning certain things and beginning to question the ones who were presenting the information, they felt the need to draw back and pull away some information so people couldn't discover who they truly are, who their roots were, who their ancestors were, and where they came from. So, over time, that serpent, that Kundalini energy, was put to sleep. And so I think that's what a sleep state is, kind of in a way, is where, it's getting loud out there, is where people live oblivious to what's happening around them. Like we just go with what's being said, what we being told, and we're taught not to ask questions. And whereas in the Bible it says they were kicked out of the garden. The Bible says that they were put out of the garden, right? And the eyes was open. But then they was put out to feed on their own, like they wasn't a part of the community. They wasn't part of the garden anymore. And it's like that now. The people who wake up and start asking questions and start seeing things from a different perspective and really see what's happening, how the majority is being manipulated to think a certain way, to act a certain way, how we're programmed from the time we're children up until adults to where no one has to tell us what to do. We just automatically do it, and it's according to what somebody else has, in a sense, predestined for us to do, right? Because when you program somebody, you want to program them beginning at an early age, and do it as much as possible so you don't have to always reiterate, and you can trust that when you let them go, they're going to do exactly what you taught them over and over and over again, and they won't question why do I have to do this or why do that. And you know what, and we do it with our kids too. We tell them to do certain things, and then when they ask why, we say don't question me. But sometimes they need to ask why, and it be a valid question, right? Like if you tell your child a lie about their age when y'all go out to a buffet or something, they like, why mama, why I gotta lie if I'm this age and you telling me to be this age? And the mama get mad and say, don't ask me why, just do what I say, right? So it is necessary to ask questions, and I'm gonna ponder on this some more. I don't know exactly if I'm gonna post this video yet. I'm trying to make sure that I articulate it right, because I don't want anybody to get the wrong misunderstanding, because this is not me saying that there isn't a God. I know there is a God, a higher source, but I don't think that the God that they're mentioning in the Bible, in a sense, is the same, because I feel like it's backwards. Like, yeah, I feel like it's backwards, in a sense, upside down, like twisted in a way. And I know that more information and more clarity will come to me, but I did want to do this video so I can have a documentation of already what's come to me. I just thought that was interesting.